What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I'm not on a step mill. If you're new to the channel, hit the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. So it's college football related, sports related. We have a good time. And today I want to talk about the conference championship games of note. Notably, the SEC Conference Championship, the Big 12 Conference Championship, the Pac-12 Conference Championship, as it doesn't really matter who's going to win the ACC Championship because there's no way this committee is going to leave out Clemson. Pardon me. And there's no way that you're going to leave Ohio State out of this college football playoff because, well, they're the best team in college football today by my estimation. And LSU is going to get in with a loss to Georgia. It's about whether or not Georgia can get in with a win against LSU. So there's a couple things that I just want to get to right off top. First one is going to be joined by Shehan Jayaraja later on to talk more about Oklahoma and Baylor in particular. I'm excited about that. Knowledgeable dude. I enjoy talking with him. You probably heard him on the channel before, and it's just a lot of fun. Now, I have this take that Ohio State has 3 Heisman Trophy candidates on one football team, to which I would ask you, who else can say that? Because if you run through them, and I did, you're talking about Clemson, who might have 2, depending on how you feel about Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence has 2,870 yards passing with 30 tutties and, yes, 8 INTs. To which I would also add to that, Sam Howell has played a much better season of football at North Carolina than Trevor Lawrence has, passing for 3,347 yards and 35 TDs to just 7 interceptions. So that would be out. And then you go to LSU. All right, so Joe Burrow, that's your one. Then you go on maybe Jamar Chase, who's got about 70-ish receptions and over 1,200 yards receiving. Pushing 20 touchdowns? Maybe. But after that, you really get up a creek because as good as Grant Delpit has been in years past, he's not a Heisman-level safety. That's not what that is. Then you go to Georgia. You're not actually going to put anybody from Georgia on a Heisman Trophy list at all. You're just going to talk about how great they've been defensively. And then when Jake Fromm is allowed to cook, he's been pretty good. But the closest thing they've had to a Heisman Trophy candidate offensively is DeAndre Swift. And he just doesn't have the touches to get there. And you continue to go down the list. You get to Oklahoma, you get to Jalen Hurts. And as much as you would want to put CeeDee Lamb in that conversation, you can't because he does not get that many opportunities to touch the football because his offense this year has been very much the Jalen Hurts show. Doesn't make it wrong, just makes it a thing that is hard to accomplish where you can get more than one. So the idea that we're having a hard time getting to 2 Heisman Trophy winners on one football team, or finalists, I should say, not winners, is difficult. But then when you get to Ohio State, Justin Fields, Chase Young, and J.K. Dobbins all could be invited to New York, rightfully so. They won't be. You're only going to get one of those cats. Probably going to be Chase Young. Probably won't be Justin Fields, although I don't necessarily think he's getting his due. I mean, that dude's going to be pushing 50 TDs by the time they whip Wisconsin like they stole something with probably just 1 pick. Also had his Heisman moment, if you were looking for one, against Michigan. My man gets bumped into the knee. It tweaks. We're all sick to our stomachs because we don't want Justin Fields hurt. I don't care who you root for. You don't want Justin Fields hurt. You want to see that man play football, and you want to see him lead this football team because he has felt like much more of a compliment to Ryan Day's offense because J.K. Dobbins has been so good, because Chris Olave has been so good, because Benjamin Victor can catch all the difficult passes and none of the easy ones, and because Garrett Wilson has ascended into that upper level of Ohio State wide receivers. You just feel good about them, right? To say nothing about how great the offensive line has been and how many lanes they just open up for J.K. Dobbins on a continuous basis. But when Chris Chugunov came in, is he Justin Fields? No. Is he bad? No. But you also got to prove, if you're Justin Fields, how important you are to the success of Ohio State, because he comes back in with the brace on his left knee and rolls to his left and drops a dime 30 yards through the air to Garrett Wilson in the back of the end zone, to which I was going, that dude knows how to play some quarterback. And if you don't really want to get on board with Ohio State being the best team in college football and you're really riding for LSU, I would ask you, how many times has Ohio State given up 37 points to a team with a losing record? Okay? Because LSU has done it twice. Vanderbilt ain't no good. Okay? They ain't no good. They scored 38 on LSU. Ole Miss got embarrassed of their own doing, had the quarterback pulled against Mississippi State. Same quarterback, John Rice Plumlee, that rushed for 212 yards on LSU's defense. The same Ole Miss offense run by Rich Rodriguez that put up over 600 yards of offense on LSU's defense. That's a bad football team. They're not going to play in anything like a bowl game. They're back to the drawing board about who their quarterback is even going to be next year. Is it Matt Corral or is it John Rice Plumlee? I mean, these are all things that you have to take into account when you talk about the best teams in college football. Clemson has a better claim to the number 2 team or even number 1 team than LSU does because Clemson has just skull-dragged people. And I don't want to hear about they didn't play nobody because they didn't play nobody last year. And they got to the college football playoff. They beat the hell out of Notre Dame 30-3. And then they handed Alabama its head in a way that nobody has handed Nick Saban his head. Nobody at all. And yet Dabo still wants to say that we're trying to get Georgia in there and leave Clemson out. Nah, dog. That ain't what it is. It's in your own head. You in your own head on that one. But I would support anybody that wanted to rank LSU as the number 3 team in the country because I think that's how they played. Okay? Joe Burrow is awesome. That offense is awesome. But they're giving up points to teams they shouldn't be giving up points to. And that's just the long and the short of it. All right. Let's check chat. Ooh-wee. Let's see what we got in here. Trying to go back to the top because I'll never do a good job of that. Brandon Wiley already giving it. Hey, Coop, what's good? Let's see what he got. They finally made up one of these live shows. Hey, that's what's up. Kellen Cameron in the house. Utah strength of schedule is booty. That's a very good point. As a matter of fact, let's pick up that point. Utah's strength of schedule is booty. Okay? Because Utah ain't got but one ranked win on the schedule. And that team that they beat wasn't ranked at the time. It's USC. Same USC that's got 4 losses. Go 8-4 through the regular season. We'll see what bowl game they end up in. But it's not just that Utah lost to USC. It's that Utah lost to USC with a 3rd-string quarterback in Matt Fink, who went for over 300 yards and was just torching that Utah secondary. Everybody wanted to tell me about how great Utah's defense was. And I'm going, yeah, defensive line is great, but that secondary is trash. And they have been exposed by better football teams, right? If you got anything like a passing game, you can go at Utah. And I expect Oregon to do Oklahoma and perhaps even Baylor if it goes that way, but to do the Big 12's light work by beating up on this Utah team, handing them their second L so that the Pac-12 ends up with 2 teams with 2 losses and they can't get into the college football playoff yet again. But you're also going up and down its schedule and going, who did Utah play? Are we going to point to BYU? Is that who we're going to point to? Are we going to point to this bad Colorado team that's not even respected in the city of Boulder? Who are we going to point to? Are we going to point to Arizona State? Are we going to point to Arizona? Who are you going to tell me that Utah has beaten to underscore why they should be in the college football playoff? Because right now, the only thing Utah has going for it is that it plays in a Power 5 and that it plays a crappy schedule and has 11 wins. Because if you wanted to compare Utah to Memphis, you'd have the same argument. Because I would ask you, who did Memphis beat? They beat a top 25 Southern Methodist team who got to 10 wins for the first time since 1984 this season. I would argue that Memphis has a better strength of schedule than Utah, but Memphis ain't going to get anywhere near the college football playoff because they don't play in a Power 5, even as the American has outperformed both the ACC and the Pac-12 when we're talking about how good your football teams have been inside your conference. If anybody is getting worked over this, it's Memphis, because they went and they beat the Cincinnati team that had the 1 loss to the team I think is the best team in the country. And even if you don't, it's the number 2 team in the country. Yes, it was a 42-0 beatdown, but 1 loss is 1 loss. And if we're looking around and we're going, who else has 1 loss and has a pretty well comparable schedule? It'd also be Baylor, right? Because Baylor had beaten who that was ranked, who that you respected. They didn't even want to put Baylor inside the top 10 until they beat Texas. And Brand's mad the most here because I thought Baylor should have been a top 10 team from jump when the college football playoff rankings came out. But the fact that they weren't also underscores just what this committee's watching, which is Ohio State, who they have to play, and the SEC. I also know that there's SEC bias on that playoff committee because I made that upload, and you can go check that out on the channel. It's in the monologue playlist. However, I'll add to this. Appalachian State has one loss to Georgia Southern, a 7-5 Georgia Southern team. Ain't as bad as you think they are. And yet you're going to sit here and you're going to tell me that somehow Utah has a better resume than anybody else with one loss? Man, Oklahoma's got ranked wins against Baylor, Iowa State, which probably won't be ranked after this week because they got beat by Kansas State. Ranked win against Oklahoma State. Ranked win against Texas, which you could counteract and you could say, hey, Texas ended up 7-5. I'm saying, though, that if you wanted to look at Oklahoma's schedule, you're going to find Oklahoma State or Iowa State or Kansas State or any one of those teams that's ranked along with Baylor, and you're going to see a ranked win. Whereas with Utah, what are you going to see? You're going to see Utah beat a USC team with 4 losses. You're going to see Oklahoma beat a Baylor team with 1. Now, this is all as we get ready for the conference championship game that's going to be played on Saturday, where we're going to get some more moving and shaking, because as much as it sucks for Wisconsin, if they beat Ohio State, nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to put them in the college football playoff. The Rose Bowl is the best they can hope for. I also think that this loss for Alabama against Auburn, against the Fighting Malzahns, kicks them out of the Sugar Bowl. Now, I think that on merit, you got to go with Georgia if they take an L against LSU, or Florida or Auburn. You can't go with Bama, because Bama doesn't have a ranked win at all, according to the playoff committee. And then according to the according to the Associated Press poll, it's only Texas A&M. 7-5 Texas A&M. 50-7 beatdown by LSU. Doubled them up in the last avenged that loss from last year. So I get what you want to tell me about Bama and how they travel and fan bases and Saban, but you don't even get Tua Tagovailoa in there. You don't even get the draw. All you get is Nick Saban versus Jalen Hurts, and that's boring. Neither one of those dudes got anything to say. But even aside from that, right? That's the sports talk radio of me. Aside from that, you don't actually have a squad that competes. You're hurt. You got Najee Harris in parts. Now, you got a 2017 class that I think is awesome. Jerry Jeudy, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith. I can keep going on it. But how many of them dudes is going to play? How many of them dudes is even going to be up there in the Sugar Bowl trying to get it? Because the last time the Oklahoma applied to play Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, all we had to hear about was Nick Saban saying nobody wanted to be here, and then Trevor Knight goes and beats you down, throwing for 300 yards. I don't want to do that no more. Give me Auburn or Georgia or friggin' Florida. Give me somebody that's got something to prove. Give me Auburn trying to get to 10 wins. Give me Bo Nix. Oh, give me a Jake Fromm squad that already has an L to South Carolina. Give me the Florida squad that only has L's to Georgia and LSU. That's the game to watch. Those are going to be outstanding football games. I don't think that Utah can give you that either. Let's see what else got in here. Sports talk radio on demand. That is what we are doing. RJY is Utah over us. Hey, appreciate that, Justin Harris. That's what's up. $10 super chat. Number 1 fan. I appreciate you, homie. Good looks. So what else we got in here? How does the AP poll think beating an unranked Texas A&M is better than beating Michigan in the big house and puts LSU back at 1? All they're doing is looking at the scoreboard, dog. That's what it is. They're looking at the box score. That's all they're looking at. Let's see what we got in here. It don't really matter who comes in the 4th spot. They just going to lose to whoever the number 1 team is. That's G-Wash. All right, I'm going to pick that one up. Pick up G-Wash right quick. Read this one more time for you. It don't really matter who comes in the 4th spot. They just going to lose to whoever the number 1 team is. So the royalists among us, the folks that believe in the crown and the sanctity of the monarchy and the oligarchy, Russian bots among us would tell us, hey man, why do we even have a college football playoff? There are only 3 teams for a 4-team playoff that we think should be in this thing. Well, it ain't about what you think, all right? Just because you think a team is going to beat another team doesn't mean it's going to happen. Even if you're right more often than you're not. But the thing I love about football, the thing I love about sport, is it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the scoreboard says. The kiddos decide who the best team is in college football by did you win or did you lose? The thing that Georgia fans will tell you is that, hey, we won that game on paper. I said, but you didn't win the game and get again the hedges. We got South Carolina on the scoreboard. I don't want to hear about how many yards you put up. I don't want to hear about how many turnovers you created. I want to know what the scoreboard says because we keep score. That's the reason why we do all of this. So to tell me that the 4 spot doesn't matter, also what? You're going to tell me that you don't really expect Oklahoma, Baylor, or Georgia, or Utah to go in there and get a W against Ohio State, Clemson, or LSU. Fine, that's okay. But they still should need to do it. They have to do it. That's why we play the games. Otherwise, are we just going to give you a piece of paper that says, hey, you're the best looking team on paper? To which I need to find another sport. Because my favorite sport is all about, did you win or did you lose? Now, if you want to be a royalist and you want to tell me that Clemson, Ohio State, and LSU are the only 3 teams that deserve to be in there, cool. You can't come drink my Kool-Aid. But if you do want to know who the best team is in all the land in the entire football bowl subdivision, guess what you need? You need a playoff. And right now, I'm stuck with this 14 playoff as I want 16. Some of y'all want 6. Some of y'all want 8. I don't care what y'all want. I want 16 because that means that every team that gets in should be in. And because I want 16, I actually want fewer than they have in the FCS. The FCS playoff is 24 teams. You get automatic bids to all 10 conferences. What are we doing? Why are we the only sport without a for real tournament to decide who the champs are? There are over 300 men's basketball teams. They put 68 of them in a tournament. 68. Don't nobody think Northern Iowa is going to go win no championship. But that is not the point. The point is everybody deserves a shot if they get in. If you win your conference, you deserve a shot at the belt. Because that's what I want. I'm not even supposed to be here. There's enough people on this channel that believe in me and believe in what we're doing with this community that I'm allowed to compete with other folks and show every single day I'm going to bring it, and you don't want it with me. I will destroy your favorite sports talk radio host given the chance. Fight me. But I also believe that I'm a group of 5 team. I'm Boise State showing up to play Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl. You can't tell me I'm not going to win. You just going to have to go and beat me. And until somebody beats me, I can't be beaten. See Central Florida in 2017. You don't want to hear Central Florida's mouth anymore. Nobody does. Because most of us believe they were to get ran by that Alabama team that won the national championship. But they didn't do it. They went and they whooped Auburn's behind in the Peach Bowl. They went undefeated. If you go undefeated during the course of the regular season, you deserve a shot at the belt. If you are a conference champion at the end of the season, you deserve a shot at the belt. Until we can come up with a better way to get people shots at the belt, I'm going to be here to yell about it. Let me check out. I missed Super Chat. Who we got? Robert Lane. Why they trashing D in the media top 30? Because they're not watching the games, Robert. They're not watching Oklahoma hold teams to 20 points or fewer in 6 straight games, dog. Not 6 straight. In 6 games of 12. Okay? They're going to point to one game and they're going to say, oh, you remember that time that Oklahoma gave up 48 to Kansas State? Yeah, I do. You remember that time that LSU gave up 38 to Vanderbilt, 37 to Ole Miss, and 35 to Texas? Yeah, because I do too. They're not dragging LSU's defense. And by the way, Oklahoma's defensive statistical ranking is better than LSU's. Matter of fact, there's a handful of Big 12 teams that are playing absolutely outstanding defense. But the reputation of the league over the last few years has been we will score and score in bunches on you. Going back like over a decade, now that I think about it. Going back to like 2008 when Kevin Wilson's squad was just murdering people. But since we don't have enough analysts that like football, like it enough to watch as much of it as you possibly can, because on a given weekend in the college football season, there are over 100 games being played. I watch as many as I possibly can. I watched Akron go 0 for 12 in their game against Ohio. I watched them lose to Eastern Washington, made fun of the ESPN broadcast because it went off the air and they had to call it like a radio show for like 2 minutes. Because I love football. So I know what I'm watching. I'm the same person that told all of y'all Jalen Hurts ain't the one not to beat anybody passing the football, and that's why I would not pick them in the college football playoff. But I still do think they would deserve a chance if they get into it, okay? If Gary Patterson goes through a 3-man front on you, that is an indictment of your ability to throw the ball down the field. He doesn't think you can see it. Okay? I've been saying all year that Jalen Hurts is a one-man show. To which people say, hey, RJ, look at the passer efficiency stuff. Look at where he's actually dropping the ball. To which I said, You see him dropping the ball on the floor? You seeing him throwing it to the other team. You seeing him put you in bad situations with the game on the line. But everybody wanted to tell me that I was crazy or that I was just trying to say that the kid couldn't play. No, I wanted the kid to play. I wanted Lincoln Riley to turn him into yet another Heisman Trophy winner. And he might still be a Heisman Trophy finalist, even as he has failed to throw for 200 yards in the past 2 games. Just going to leave that out there. 145, 163 games consecutively. But it doesn't matter because Oklahoma's been able to run the football because you're riding Bill Bedenbaugh's offensive line. And while you're paying attention to what Jalen Hurts is doing, you're not paying attention to what Alex Grinch and particularly the secondary has been doing. Because when Delaire and Turner Yell and Patrick Fields are playing their butts off, the defense excels. When trouble is making tackles, the defense excels. And then you look at Brendan Bookie Radley-Hiles, y'all's favorite whipping boy, had 10 tackles, 2 of which saved house calls by Chuba Hubbard. Okay? 2 of them. Won't give him his due. You look at Parnell Motley, who has been up and down for his entire career, was the player of the game in Bedlam, was robbed of an interception. We all saw the replay, was an interception. 2 forced fumbles to go with a pick, though. That's what this defense has done. Give Oklahoma's defense its flowers. See what else got in here. I had to call Shahan here in a little bit. Ronnie says, loving our much improved defense. Me too, man. Yeah, man. Yeah, you can't curse or use bad language in this chat. You're just gonna get put in timeout and be made to look stupid. Okay? That's just what's gonna happen. See what else got in here. I hope. Ben Wyman, love your content, RJ. Keep it up. I appreciate that, homie. Good looks. Good looks. See what's got here. Who do you think should win the Heisman? It's Joe Burrow's award. I mean, he can lose it this weekend, but he's at over 4,400 yards passing, over 45 touchdowns through the air. It's his award. You know, he's having the kind of season that Kyler and Baker were having. That's who I think is going to win this award because they don't give it to a defensive player. It's Chase Young to me. I think that should be the Heisman winner with 16.5 sacks. 16.5? And Ndamukong Suh had like 12.5, y'all. He's more dominant than Ndamukong Suh was in 2009. And I think most people who were watching college football in 2009 would tell you that Mark Ingram has Ndamukong Suh's Heisman Trophy in his bedroom. Okay? It's Chase Young, but it's going to go to Joe Burrow because it's a popularity contest. Because the Heisman Trophy is a pageant. I hate pageants. Of course I do. I like scoreboards. What's we got in here? See what we got. Burrow was our second string. Yeah, and that's probably why you got housed by Purdue by 29. Sit down, son. Let's see what we got in here. Can anyone beat Ohio State? Clemson's got the best chance to beat Ohio State. They're good enough defensively. They're good enough offensively. I think that's the best game we would see, too. I just don't think LSU had the horses in the front 7 to play with Ohio State or even Clemson for that matter. Let's see what we got in here. LSU ever make the playoffs? I mean, they will. They're in. They're in magic marker along with Clemson and Ohio State, despite whatever happens this weekend. Doesn't matter. Let's see. Justin here. Sooners can beat LSU. Fight me. I just did, Justin. Appreciate the super chat. Let's see what we got. The Big 12 plays Baylor defense than the plays better defense than the SEC this year. I think Florida, Georgia, and LSU. Well, not LSU. Florida, Georgia, Auburn. That's the team. Florida, Georgia, Auburn might fight you on that, but I get your point. Through the middle, you're right. Through the middle, you're right. Not at the top. Let's see. Clemson ought to worry. Everybody's got to play Clemson. Everybody. Everybody ought to be afraid of Clemson. You all should be afraid of Clemson. If you're not afraid of Clemson, you haven't been watching enough college football. That's Voltron up there. Shane Bentley, RJ, if UGA does beat LSU, what do you think the final college football playoff rankings would be? I think it would be UGA at 3 and LSU at 4. Ohio State be 1, Clemson be 2. So Buckeyes, Tigers, Bulldogs, Tigers. You just flip-flop them. That's all. It ain't going to be that big movement. Corey, I'm going to talk about Rattler after the season. Because right now, I want to talk about what's going on right now. I don't really care about what's going to go down next season, except to say recruiting. I don't want to talk about somebody else's job right now. We got. Most people aren't really going to be here during the offseason, but I cover all this stuff during the offseason because I don't. This is year round over here. Let's see what we got. Let me see. Why do we start college football playoffs with 4 teams with 5 Power 5 conferences? Because the chairmans and commissioners of college football playoff selection, let's call them Power 5 programs, are stupid. It's the stupidest thing. Why you would have 4 spots for 5 teams that you know you want to get in, plus Notre Dame, so 6, is stupid. I don't understand why they thought that was a good idea. Because at least somebody, Pac-12 in this case, with egg on their face every single year. Every year somebody's going to be very upset because they're going to have a team that they think deserves to be in, to which the rest of us are going to be like, ugh, I don't know about that, dog. But if there were 6 and you had 5 automatic bids for the 5 power conferences, and then you had the 1 at large, it probably goes to Notre Dame more often than it does to the group of 6, but that's a different take altogether. Then you get what you want. But no, college football's dumb. And some of the people that run it are dumb about it. Just got in here. Let's see. Is Memphis a lock for the Cotton Bowl? They are if they win if they win this American, they're a lock for it. Yeah, absolutely. Because they won't get in there over like an Appalachian State. Just because people don't respect the Sun Belt in the way that they respect the American. By the way, shout out to App State, first 11-win team in Sun Belt history. That's what's up. Well, in the regular season. What we got here? Why not use the 1AA model? I've been saying it, and my buddies over at College Football Nerds have done that upload, but mostly they're royalist. I mean, Daniel and Josh know how I feel about this. They want to talk about how you're going to dilute college football and that there are 130 FBS teams and why don't we have a playoff for all of them? I'm going, sure, fine, whatever. Cut the regular season to 6. Well, then you change college football to something different. Yeah, you changed it when you changed it to 12 regular season games instead of 10 in 2006. You know, or in 2015 when you went to 80 bowl games. When you introduced the idea of the college football playoff. When you introduced the idea of the BCS championship. When you introduced the bowl alliance system. When you brought the NCAA to classify the thing in 1936 or 1937. When you brought in the AP poll era in 1936. You change things. That's how this thing works. That's how we keep evolving. I'm telling you, man, you got 2 schools of thought on this. And most of the old fogies who are conservative about it want to keep my college football the same. Same dudes that don't want to play players. You know? Lames. Lames. All of them. Lames. Right here. Rankings don't mean nothing. Then what the hell are you doing here? All right. Let's talk to Shahan. That might be a little loud. Y'all let me know if this gets too loud.
Hello.
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Hey, doing great, doing great.
Very cool. So I want to pick it up and ask you straight up, should I be worried about Baylor?
I think so. Absolutely think so. Are we going?
Yeah, we're going. We're going.
All right. Let's get into it. Well, yes, I do absolutely think that Oklahoma should be worried about Baylor. I mean, I think you look at that last game, and it was a weird game for a lot of reasons. Obviously, because Baylor, got out to such a quick lead, was able to score so quickly. Jalen Hurts made a bunch of mistakes that kind of let that happen. But also in the second half, I mean, the reality is, I don't think that Oklahoma's defense is going to shut out Baylor for another half. There are just so many things that happened in that football game that are weird, honestly. And I do look at these two teams as being really head and shoulders above the rest of the Big 12, first of all, being legit sort of top 10 programs right now in college football. And when I look at Baylor, I mean, I think that, that defense can do some things to replicate a lot of that performance. And ultimately, it took the biggest comeback in Oklahoma history for them to win the game. That's what it comes down to. It took the biggest comeback in Oklahoma history. And I don't think they'll get down by 25 points again, but I do think that Baylor matches up pretty well with Oklahoma's offense relative to other teams. And look, if Charlie Brewer's healthy, if Denzel Mims is healthy, I think that there's no reason why Baylor can't be very competitive in this football game.
This is my man, Shehan J. Araja. You can follow him on the Twitters at Shehan J. Araja. He is college football and basketball insider at Dave Campbell, Texas Football. And we're talking about Baylor and Oklahoma. Probably want to touch on Texas here in a little bit because that's ridiculous. Look, you brought up a good point about you needed a historic comeback from Oklahoma to win that game. And you say school record, and I understand that, but it's also the biggest against a team that was that good in 70 years, and that's just not going to happen again. I believe that. And I don't think you're going to shut out Baylor for another half of football. That said, what worries me ain't the offense. It's James Lynch and Blake Lynch. They're terrifying. Because you're getting pressure with 3 men up front. You're getting home with 3 men up front against 5. That's not supposed to be a thing, Shehan. And yet, against Texas, it was a thing. And, of course, against Kansas, which has a better offense than it does defense, it was absolutely a thing. So when you look at what Oklahoma had to do to come back, and you look at how many turnovers you had to get out of Charlie Brewer and that group, where's the edge for Oklahoma? I mean, except to say that we know that we beat them. Kinda. You beat them on a fluke. You're not going to beat them on a fluke again.
Yeah, I think that the two areas where Oklahoma does have an advantage, and I think we saw obviously before, was I think that one area is in the trenches on defense. I think that Oklahoma defensive line, and obviously, you throw in Kenneth Murray in there sort of as a linebacker, I think that they're going to be able to get after Brewer. That's something that they did pretty well the last couple of weeks, or a couple of weeks ago, rather. And I think that's something that will continue. Now, Baylor's gotten Connor Galvin back since that game, and really since that moment, Baylor's offensive line has looked different. I mean, it has looked a lot further along. And even against Oklahoma early in the game, I mean, they did a good job of keeping those good defenders, Neville Gallimore and Ronnie Perkins, and obviously Kenneth Murray, out of the backfield. But I still think that it is an area where Oklahoma is more talented. The other area where I think that you obviously point to is depth, and that's something, that's the reason to me why Oklahoma has kept winning the league over and over and over again, is that a lot of teams have a good top 22, and I think that Baylor's got a good top, 30, 35. But when you talk about a top 85, there's nobody in the league, obviously, that can match what Oklahoma consistently puts out. Not Texas, not Baylor, not anybody. And I think that, when you get to game 13 of the year, that's where the depth starts to really come out. When you start having to put in a couple of backups, play some young players, I think that Oklahoma can win from that perspective. And on the field, too, I mean, I think that obviously Jalen Hurts is a really good player. CeeDee Lamb is probably the best offensive player on this field, if not the best player overall. There are ways that Oklahoma can cause issues, but I also think, obviously, that Baylor can do the same.
All good points. I do want to throw one turd in the punch bowl if I can. OU doesn't know what it means, or at least I should say OU. These kids don't know what it means to lose a Big 12 championship. It's becoming old hat. It's a thing that, as an OU fan, you're expected to go and win this league. Baylor has kiddos that remember going 1-11. Right, and remember 7 wins and Vanderbilt as a peak season. Now, I'm not going to say they're in the deep water, but they're in the thin air. What's the sense of how they're going to handle this and how Matt Rhule is going to coach them through this week of just rampant emotion, man?
Yeah, I think you're right. And the two things I'd say to that is, one, I think that a lot of these kids, after playing Oklahoma a couple weeks ago, they know they can beat this team. There isn't any fear. There isn't any question. They left that game being like, we were the better football team. We should have won this game. We should be 12-0 right now. And honestly, I mean, again, Oklahoma won the football game, but it's hard to argue with them that for a lot of that game, that Baylor was the better football team. And I think that sort of stuff does matter when you go and play a team the second time. And I think in general, it's hard to beat a team two times. And Oklahoma's managed to do it because they've been the better team. But I do think that when you look at sort of this run that Oklahoma's been on, Baylor's as interesting an opponent in the Big 12 title game, I think, as they've had so far. Because they played TCU that first year, who was completely overmatched. And then you played Texas last year, and I think Texas was a little better, but still pretty overmatched. And I think that you look at the way that this game went earlier this season and look at the way that Baylor's played all season long, this is the most worthy opponent that Oklahoma has played since we've got the Big 12 championship game back. And you're right. They were 1-11 a few years ago. There was a lot of question about this team a few years ago, and these kids haven't been in these situations before. And actually, I think that came out in the first matchup between these two teams. But the flip side of that is I do think that this team feels like they have nothing to lose, right? I mean, they weren't supposed to win the Big 12. They weren't supposed to be in this game. They weren't supposed to be fighting for the most wins in school history. So I think that, yes, there's going to be a big moment, and I think that it'll be interesting to see how they respond to their second shot at that big moment. But, this team isn't scared, and they know. I mean, they're confident that they can go out there and win this football game.
Okay, let's not assume. We're going to get a Big 12 champ. We get Baylor. Just humor. I'm saying to the audience, humor me, because it's a very pro OU audience.
Sure.
Let's say Baylor wins this. Do they get in the playoff? I mean, let's say Baylor wins this, and let's say that Georgia loses. Let's go chalk. Georgia loses. Oregon beats a Utah team, and it clears the way for whoever wins the Big 12 championship to get in. Are they going to keep Baylor out?
I think they're going to try to find a way. Now, I don't know if that happens. If Utah does end up being a 2-loss team, if obviously Georgia ends up being 3-loss at that point, I don't know. I mean, obviously, if Alabama had beaten Auburn over the weekend, then I think that it's a clear no that Baylor could not jump them.
Right.
But I think that they would certainly have a shot. Now, it would still come down, I think, to that last group. I still think that even you look at the AP, Florida's still ahead of Baylor right now. There's no guarantees with this because we've seen this before, and honestly, there's so many comparisons to this 2014 season to me right now, where you're going through and you're you're 11-1. You went through your conference, you won a bunch of ranked games, and ultimately it didn't matter. There's just such a feeling of that too. But if Utah were to lose, I think Baylor would have a hard time being left out. But I mean, look, if I'm looking at this too, and you look at the ranked wins that Baylor would have versus what Utah had, it would be the comparison of way better resume with Baylor versus obviously a team that's been more consistently dominant in Utah. I don't understand how that's even a question, but obviously they feel differently. I do think that Baylor would get in, but I wouldn't put any money on it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things I love to do during game days, and especially on Selection Sunday, is follow Shayhan's Twitter account. You can follow him at Shayhan Jayaraja, because I feel like you're saying everything that I'm thinking, and you're getting there quicker because you're like, wait a second. Baylor beats a bad Texas team. Let's see, I don't even call them bad. Let's just say they're a mediocre Texas team. And you're going to put them in the top 10 after that? It wasn't even Baylor's best performance of the year. And yet, brands. I'm going, God. I get it. I root for a brand name team. I root for a blue blood. So I benefit from that. And I'll tell everybody, Oklahoma's not going to lose a resume battle to a non-blue blood, right? You're going to lose one to perhaps Alabama or Georgia, what have you. But Baylor, goodness me, man. I would be pulling my hair out because you don't get very many opportunities to be here. As a matter of fact, it was Bryles, and then before that, about 30 years. 30 years in between really great Baylor stretches. And now seems like you're at the start of another one. You can hang on to Matt Rhule, and it seems like you will because he got the contract extension. But do you just get mad? I mean, as a fan, not necessarily as a person that's covering the teams, but as just pissy as a guy that went to school there?
Well, my biggest thing with all of this is I just want it to make sense, right?
Okay.
I want to understand what do I need to do? What does this team need to do to get in? And it's just interesting because when you see these rankings, like every single week, when you see them put out, it's just almost nonsensical at times because my big thing was a couple weeks ago before the Oklahoma game, especially, like I didn't understand how Baylor could have beaten 2 ranked opponents and still not be a top 10 team, even though they were 9-0 at the time. It's stuff like that where you just feel like, what even is the criteria? What do they care about? Because it seems to have been historically that they care about wins, but then it's like, okay, but like you can be a 2-loss team ahead of a 0-loss team because you played, one other ranked team that was number 11. Like I just don't understand the logic of it. And look, I mean, brands do dominate college football, and like I think that beating Texas, whether it should or not, still means something to the committee because they remember Texas per se being, Texas. And I think that obviously that's one thing where in 2013 and 2014, the fact that Baylor had those wins over Oklahoma, even though it wasn't a great 2014 Oklahoma team. This stuff I think does matter. And look, as somebody who not only went to one of these schools, but also just loves to follow some of the smaller schools across the country, it's very frustrating because to me, it's a sign that people don't want those schools to matter, that they want it all to be about like 8 teams. And I understand, from some perspective, because like, again, you have Alabama, you have Ohio State, you have Oklahoma. Those are teams that are competitive every single year. But I think that the one thing that sucked about the playoff is that it's made everybody just talk about those teams, and not talk about some really great stories that are happening around the sport. Like, with Minnesota, like we should be talking about how incredible it is that Minnesota started 10-0, like, but it's all in the context of the playoffs. So that's all we care about. And that's frustrating to me. And ultimately it's like, Minnesota's a really good team that, I want to see play against another really good team at some points, but we won't really get to care about that because it's going to be all the talk about the playoff. It's going to be all the talk about, well, they're good, but are they this good? And I think that's the biggest thing to me where, I almost would rather just say, hey, you know what, Ohio State and LSU, go play your game. And I'd rather just get to enjoy what's going on here.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people that would root for that because those are the same people that say the playoff is already too big and that you have one. To which I would say, no, man, the way to get away from talking about the playoff, but also being fair to all the teams that actually put together pretty decent seasons is to expand the thing out to 16 and 24. Because while you're bringing up rightfully so Minnesota and what they've done, because, my joke was the last time that Minnesota was 8-0, they claimed a national championship. Like it works that way. But also teams like Memphis, who might have played a tougher schedule than Utah, or Appalachian State and their first-year head coach, Eli Drinkwitz, who's from Norman, who went there from NC State, and it just giving some more opportunities for SMU. My goodness, 10 wins for the first time since 84. My parents were married in 84. It's 35 years ago, and they're going to play in what? Cotton Bowl at best, but they're probably going to get kicked out of that because they didn't win a conference championship. I want more opportunities to talk about these teams in a way that we might for professional teams like the NBA and the NFL or even Major League Baseball. Because in Major League Baseball, the Nationals happened. That's a wild card team. They're not even nobody would let them in this format. Right. And yet they can go and they can win it all against good teams. Like an Astros team that was historically awesome. So that's the reason why I want to explode it out as opposed to make it smaller and make it even more select, because I call these people royalists that just want LSU and Oklahoma and Alabama. Because I'm going, I don't know, man. I went to TU.
Right. Well, and one thing for me is just, I think that, and not to get too far off on a different tangent, but like one thing I think that's been interesting about the playoff is that, in all reality, there are probably about 10 teams, like maybe even total, that can truly compete for consistent playoff appearances and national titles and that sort of stuff. And I think that actually when you have a 14 playoff, it's actually borne itself out where you feel like if you don't go to one of these schools, you're never going to ever have a shot at that. And 100%. So, I think that, I think that in a way that's actually reduced parity across the sport, because people feel like if they don't go to one of these schools, there's just no point. There's no point if you're a top recruit, because you'll never get a chance to play at the very top. And, and it didn't always used to be like that. I mean, back in the day, like you could go to, obviously in the 90s, Colorado, Washington, schools like that, and you get really good players. You go to Nebraska, you go to, whatever places. And
Houston.
Houston, yeah, you won the Heisman Trophy there, and you could compete for everything, and you could be a relevant team, even if you weren't going to be the number one team in America. There's still a lot to play for. But now I think we've become so centralized talking about the playoff that it almost devalues anything that happens anywhere else. Like I was talking about a kid from Oklahoma with one of my friends, Mason Fine.
Yeah.
And his response to Mason Fine was, well, yes, but Conference USA is so much lower. And I'm like, why do you care? Why do you care about that? Why is that the thing that you take away from this? Like, he's throwing for more yards than anybody else in college football. And he's, a Cherokee kid, and he's a kid at North Texas who's resurrecting a program. And like, why do we care that, would he have done this if he was playing against Big 12 opponents? I don't care. It doesn't matter to me.
I think it's also because you and I I trained myself to do this long ago because it's a better way to consume sports, but I'm looking for good stories. I'm looking for good people.
Yeah.
I'm looking for what is different about this. Like, I think I've read this on Dave Campbell. Is it Odessa Permian? It's the first year where they actually put together something like a really awesome season. And it was a lateral back. I'm forgetting the story altogether. Maybe you can help me.
UT Permian Basin.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't care what they did. Like, I don't care what their season was. That's an awesome story. And I want to see more of that. And if they did put together a really good season, then give them more opportunity to do this. And in this sport, where I tell everybody, how dare we rank teams? How dare we vote on who gets in when the kids do this 365 days a year and they get 12 opportunities to show. And if you do what I think is the toughest thing in all of sports to do, which is go undefeated during the regular season and through a national championship, my goodness, dude, like, how are we going to keep you out of this thing because of who happened to be good on your schedule that year? But to get back on point, get back on point. What is the deciding factor for Oklahoma or Baylor as you see it going into this championship game?
Yeah, I think that the ultimate decider for Oklahoma is going to be turnovers. If Jalen Hurts continues to turn the ball over at the rate that he has the last couple of weeks, I just think it's going to be a huge issue. I think that Baylor's a team that can take advantage of that, and they almost did the first time around. Hurts has done a lot of things well this year, but I think he's also put Oklahoma in a couple bad positions at times, and they've been good enough to get out of them against every team basically, other than Kansas State. But I don't think that you can continue to do that against Baylor, against a defense as good as Baylor. You can't be sloppy with the ball. You can't just, throw a whole bunch of jump balls and hope CeeDee Lamb comes down with them. You have to take care of the ball. You have to score in the red zone. You have to be disciplined. And I think that that's something that he's struggled with basically all year long. And against Baylor, I think the second time around, I don't think it's going to fly. And on the other side for Baylor, I think that Baylor, you don't necessarily want to be a possession team. I know that they want to control the clock, but I think that they need to, find a way to diversify the offense early. They need to find a way to move the chains, get down the field. It was funny, back during that game, the Baylor-Oklahoma game earlier in the year, it almost felt like it was the Bryles offense again with how quickly they were trying to strike. And I think that you saw the flip side of the Bryles offense, obviously, which is that when you don't have the ball for very long, it puts way too much on your defense and you have to defend 95 plays. So I think they have to find a way to, and actually a better way to put that might be they have to find a way to get the defense off the field. Whether it's turnovers, whether it's 3 and outs, whether it's whatever, they have to find a way to keep their offense on the field, keep the defense fresh. Because like you mentioned, when this team plays 60, 65 defensive plays, they can get to your quarterback with 3 guys. That's incredible. Not many teams in America can do that. And with guys like James Lynch and Bravion Roy, they can do it. And if you can keep them on the sideline long enough to where they have wind at the end of the game, again, I think Baylor can very much win this football game.
Yeah, man. I think for Oklahoma, you're going to have to run the ball, and you're going to have to be committed to it very early. I wouldn't even start with just trying to stretch the defense, though I think that's part of Lincoln Riley's DNA, let alone his game plan. He's going to just try to test your safeties and your corners very early because he's got those athletes outside. But the thing that I take away from football is if you're a big man, it is difficult to play a lot of football because you're a big man, right? In that you don't get gas back. You don't get a second wind. You just stay tired. And when Oklahoma is playing great football, their offensive line feels as if it has just been taking apart your defensive line. So by midway through the third quarter, it's all them all the time. And if Oklahoma does keep time of possession, which is the better way to watch this stat, I think that's what's going to decide it because I want that Baylor defense on the field for a long time if I'm an OU. On the flip side, you got to protect Charlie Brewer. Like that's what it is for me. If Oklahoma's defense can get home, it's a long day because as good as Charlie is out just making stuff happen, not that he's a dual threat kind of guy, but he's certainly good enough to pick him up, put him down. Every time that Oklahoma was able to hit him, or at the very least make it very difficult for him to move around, you saw good things happen in the secondary for Oklahoma. And if they're running the ball on this team, he's going to have all day because you're going to be terrified. If Denzel Mims or Tyquan Thornton or RJ are running wild and stupid, it's going to be a long day. So I'm going to watch to see who gets home and how often they get home because it could just as easily be Kenneth Murray Jr. overrunning plays, which is a thing that will happen. I think your point about Jalen Hurts and the turnover, I think we know about that too well. I make jokes about it, but because I had somebody try to rationalize fumbling the football to me by saying he carries the ball. Like, I think he is at 196 attempts rushing, which is stupid. It's stupid for a quarterback. And yet they'll be like, hey, he puts the ball on the ground less than wishbone quarterbacks. I said, yo, man, you're not going to get anywhere rationalizing fumbling the football. It's just not. We're not going to.
Right. And it's become a trend. You know, that's the thing. It's like, it's one thing if he's had a couple of games where he's been loose with it. And I mean, you know, having a game where you're loose with it is something that quarterbacks get criticized for, you know, but ultimately, if you're putting the ball on the ground once or twice, basically every single game, that's ultimately, you know, and it might not be even through this game. It might not be this game. It could be when you get into the playoff and have to play Ohio State. Right. That's going to cost you. Right. You know, that's really going to cost you.
And he's done that since 2016. It's not new. You know what I mean? It's not this year. It's a problem. Ball security is a thing for him. To say nothing of throwing it to the other team. Like we talk about him handling the ball, but there's even against Oklahoma State, because I'm at Boone Pickens for that game, he just lost one toward an orange jersey or black jersey, orange pants. And I'm going, what did you see? Like, why did you throw that? And that's not something I'm used to seeing out of a Lincoln Riley quarterback for sure. Before I let you get out of here, I think Matt Rhule is coach of the year. I don't think you're going to fight me on that. However, would there be something about Matt Rhule that you would watch for that perhaps gets him in trouble? Does he take over play calling or any of that sort of stuff?
I don't want to just say no.
Okay.
Right? I mean,
but if no's the answer, then no's the answer.
Right. But you know, I think that the biggest thing that you say about Matt Rhule is that you know, he's got a staff that he really trusts. You know, he never sort of meddled with Phil Snow. He never sort of meddled with Jeff Nixon. You know, he's kind of let his guys do his job, and he's been involved in the total game plan. And you know, and I think that that's one of the things that you say about that is he's not per se either an offensive or defensive guy. He's coached on both sides of the football at a high level. And I think that because of that, you know, and I mean, not to touch too much on this other guy, but you know, with Tom Herman, it's like when things go wrong on offense, it's like, it's time. I got to jump in. I got to save the day. And I don't think that Matt Rhule sort of is quite as susceptible to that just because, again, I mean, he knows his X's and O's, but he's not like an X and O's master. He's not an X and O's coach. He's not one of those guys like Lincoln Riley even, who's just like, the way that I'm going to beat you is by, you know, taking things into my own hands and being an offensive genius or a defensive genius. He's just a guy who really wants to instill the culture into his program, and he wants to be a leader, and he wants to be involved in the total team game plan, which again, I think makes Baylor a good team because I think it makes the team more complementary. But you know, I think that ultimately that's one credit that you give to him is I think he knows how to hire a staff, and again, it helps because he's winning, but he knows how to hire a staff that he trusts.
I think for Lincoln, he goes from Lincoln Riley to when we call him Lincoln F and Riley because he gets too cute with the play calls and they look they just it's like man, just run the damn ball, man. Stop with this because he's always got 2 or 3 in there, and sometimes they're fantastic. Like he had the Brock Hewitt called the Philly special, and he heard from OU fans about it because they did it first, yada yada. But no, it's that kind of stuff, and I think if those plays go well, OU wins a football game. If those plays don't go well, OU loses a football game, which is such a stupid thing to hang your hat on if you are an OU fan. But hey, that's what you get when you get Lincoln Riley. This is Shehan Jayaraja. Follow him on the Twitters at Shehan Jayaraja and college football and basketball insider for Dave Campbell, Texas football. Shehan, thanks so much, man. I appreciate this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Very cool. So I'm probably going to leave it there. If you like the channel, please remember to like and subscribe to the channel because I upload a video every single day. It's always how we relate college football related, sports related. We have a good time. We will be back tomorrow as I am every day talking college football. I uploaded like 5 videos today because segment after segment after segment. This is our time. Expect this channel to be on and popping, and we're going to have a great time this December. I promise. All right. That is it for me. Deuces.